Hello and welcome back from the weekend. It is Monday, February 17th, 2025, coming to you from our studio at Techtown. This is your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. I am J.R. Stays, and joining me is none other than producer Cheyenne Nocerini. How are you?
I'm great, J.R. How are you?
You know, I was working late on Friday.
Yeah?
Because we broke news first locally. I want to say that first news that yes, in fact, yes, Virginia, an Apple store is coming to downtown Detroit. We reported on the website. This came out on the apple.com website confirming the downtown Detroit location. Now, they didn't say the exact spot, but we have had our eyes on a place that's right in the heart of Woodward, 1 block north of the Hudson's development,
right,
since 2022. We have been talking about this Apple store. Remember?
I feel like this is the worst kept secret in Detroit.
But there was lots of people who wouldn't believe that it was going to happen, which is crazy to me because to me, every mid-sized functional city has an Apple store downtown.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we've been talking about this for gosh, Jared, when did I move back to Detroit? 2009?
People were hoping for an Apple store.
We've been talking about an Apple store downtown and knowing we finally made it.
It's an indicator of progress to many people. Some do not agree, but many people think of it as an indicator of progress. And I looked up some stats around Apple stores and why it's so important as a story to cover. It's that when an Apple store opens up, statistics show that the mall or the shopping area around it, sales go up 10% for everybody else around it because it brings so much service and sales. And there's so many reasons to go to an Apple store beyond just buying a computer or a watch. You need service, you get gifts, all that kind of stuff. So it is an important marker, but let's use this as an opportunity to talk about the greater retail scene in Detroit, downtown Detroit, and a little bit of Metro Detroit, because let's take stock of things here. One of the favorite things that people love to do is speculate online. What's next? What could happen? But we've been covering this now for a while. We've talked to some experts on background. We've had multiple episodes. Let's get our thoughts together about the future of retail in downtown Detroit and Detroit nearby. And let's start with the idea that destination retail, at least in the main street, I think is the future for downtown.
I completely agree. I think this is something that we've talked about even before the pandemic, when we had Conrad Kickart on, who has a whole book on urbanism and shopping and everything, and how stores nowadays are more of a
brand experience.
Yes, exactly. Like you go in, you look, yeah, you can shop, but also they're just showing you the goods so that way you can go in and have a tactile experience. So these big stores, right? Like now we have that H&M, now we have the Apple store coming. And I think those are destinations, and there aren't very many in Metro Detroit, right? Like you think about it and you're like, okay, well, where are the closest Apple stores? You have the one at Somerset, you have one at Partridge Creek. I think there's one in Ann Arbor. You know what I mean? So they're not everywhere.
And there's a family of brands. There are a number of brands that are like that.
Yes.
Where there's only a few in every region, usually in their main downtown and then in some of their higher end shopping malls. I think we need to reevaluate what the goals are for downtown retail. I think a lot of people look at downtown Detroit and they think that they want to have all of the neighborhood amenities. And some of them should be there,
right,
for the people that live there. But it's a very small percentage of people who live in the city who actually live downtown.
Right.
I think about this in my neighborhood. There is a retail strip on John R. with 4 or 5 buildings, which I think could be expanded. More neighborhood downtowns for a lot of those neighborhood services. I think that people really want to paste on the thing that they don't have out on 6 Mile into what should be downtown, when that should be in localized downtowns over there on Grand River and over there in different places for that everyday good. And then downtown Detroit is a regional downtown that everybody comes to for a variety of brands and is more of a destination. That doesn't mean downtown Detroit doesn't need a grocery store or something like that. I know that that was one of the number one things that popped up. Well, where's the Target?
Where do you buy food?
Yeah, this has been the trope forever.
Right.
But most people I know who buy food just go to the Rivertown Meijer a little bit outside of downtown. It would be great to have like a city Target down there.
Right.
That would be a great thing to have. But I think that is the smaller part of the picture than it being part of that regional tourist draw for shopping, for entertainment, for window shopping. And I think that is the future of those things. And I think some things are needed to create that future. I think one of those things are more brands. So what are some things you would think of?
So one of the things, like we've been talking about this for a while, of what brands now that, like if there was an Apple store, what's next, right? And I think that there's the idea of like, I know looking at it as like a parent, what would I want? What would my kids like to go and see, right? So one of the top picks would be like a Lego store. I think that would be a huge draw. I think it would bring families down. I think there are a lot of adults who love Lego. And I think that could be like a great destination for people to come down to.
It's kind of silly that the whole downtown Detroit Lego display is sometimes up at Auburn Hills.
Right. Or yeah, exactly. Like all the way in Auburn Hills. And then, another store, obviously, I think a Sephora would do great down there. I mean, not to say I love the Lip Bar.
Lip Bar is great. And I think the key here is looking at this in a way where these destination brands bring in more traffic so that the smaller places can succeed. I know that this is a hard conversation to have, but outside of ball games, there hasn't been the critical mass to make these smaller stores financially viable.
Right.
It has generally been a rotating cast of stores because there isn't enough foot traffic and money to keep those stores going. Or they do a little pop-up downtown and they go out somewhere else.
Or there is not as many office workers downtown anymore. And even, let's be honest here, Jer, even when there were office workers here downtown, they never left their building. Or if they did,
they went 1 block away.
They went 1 block away, right? They weren't exploring downtown, with the exception of engineer Randy and myself when I worked downtown, right? I was all over downtown when I worked in the First National Building. But I think a Sephora would be very good. I think with the Gardner White coming down, and we need something like, I don't know, a Crate and Barrel, a Sur La Table. I think those would also be destination places. And there's only a Crate and Barrel at 12 Oaks and in Ann Arbor. And then there's a Sur La Table in Somerset, and I want to say Ann Arbor.
I've gotten some feedback from some listeners around things they would like to see. What do you think about a store like a Zara or an Anthropologie?
I would love an Anthropologie. I can't afford an Anthropologie right now, but what I do like about Anthropologie is that they do have plus size clothing for women. And I think that's a big thing. Another
one that was sent was Free People.
I could see Free People being down here. I was also looking, I was looking at like, what are the stores in Chicago, in downtown Chicago? And it was like, okay, well, we did have a Madewell here and it didn't last.
No, because it was too early.
It was way too early.
It's because there was a Madewell and then there was Detroit is the New Black, both in that spot where the Apple store is probably going. We say probably because they didn't put the address, but they've been working on it for months. We've been hearing things for months.
And there's a spot.
The side brackets, like the same
right
size in the middle.
Right. It's right in the middle. It's a perfect size for an Apple logo.
But neither of those things succeeded there.
No.
And when I say succeeded, they existed, but you have to make a business. It has to be something where it really catches up and gets bigger. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't enough. If there were enough traffic for these businesses to succeed or enough interest, they would keep going in another place.
Right.
And they didn't. And that's a hard thing to say, especially in the context of gentrification, because what's gentrification? What is fiscal capitalism? And they interact, right? Because capitalism is the air we breathe. So in that light, I think it's important we have some sort of artists and retail market where we have a suite of smaller storefronts to support that local stuff to get them their start, but right in the middle of things or near the middle of things where people will actually go experience it. because everything's got to happen within a certain number of blocks.
Right.
It's not the same shopping district to go, say, from downtown Detroit up to the neat little shopping district that is Cass and Canfield,
Right.
for instance.
Those are two totally different shopping experiences, right? Like if you're going to downtown Detroit to go shopping, you're going to H&M, you're going to go to the Apple store, you're going to go around there. What I will say, and what I would like to see downtown, is a bookstore.
Yes, a literati level bookstore.
Yes.
Or a Sidetrax level.
Like a Powell's or something like that. Like
if you don't know, Literati is the big bookstore in downtown Ann Arbor. They do a wonderful job. Every time I go to Ann Arbor, I stop through because it is a top-notch experience. And we need that in downtown Detroit.
I agree. Remember when there used to be a Borders?
Yes. It was a long time ago, though.
So long ago.
So
it
many
was when it
years.
was the CompuWare building, Jer.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, isn't it where Texas State Brazil is?
Yes.
Yeah, that used to be a Borders, you guys, if you weren't around town.
And there used to be a McDonald's in Capitol Park.
There was.
That was my McDonald's when I was a kid. I know that there are people who it's two camps. I want all independence and screw chains, and I love chains. Those are the two camps I keep seeing. It's one without the other, but the reality is you need both.
You have to have both. You cannot do one without the other.
Without the draw. And that's been part of that. We've seen so many businesses come and go, if we're going to keep it real.
Mm-hmm.
And they just didn't have the foot traffic outside of games.
Right.
And if you want to build downtown up, there has to be foot traffic outside of games. Well, you got to give people reasons to come down because there are not enough residents. It's going to be a while until those buildings are built to have enough residents for that. So you got to work with what you got. But I think there's an infrastructure thing that needs to happen too. I have an unpopular opinion.
What's that, Jer?
Downtown Detroit needs more parking. Let me explain, because you're giving me
I'm giving you the look. You can't see it on there, guys. I mean, yes, I think I know where you're going, but why don't you say what you're thinking?
There needs to be garages or set-asides or something. I'm not saying free parking, but if you're coming down to shop, you get the validation sticker or stamp, and your parking is free or cheap or $5 if you shop. That to help separate it from the people for games. It needs to be dedicated. It probably, like Royal Oak or Ferndale, needs to be run by the city.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the thing. Yeah, the garages are annoying. I know a lot of people who live in Ferndale can get annoyed by the garage that's there.
Oh, people hate the dot.
Some people do, but some people, right.
Let me rephrase this. There are residents who do not like the dot who live in Ferndale, and I hear about it all the time in the Ferndale forums. And it's really annoying because we need more parking in downtown Ferndale. And no, I don't like paying for parking, but I do it because if I'm going downtown, that's what I'm going to do.
But if you're going to park at the dot, it's a few bucks.
Yeah.
If you park downtown, it could be anywhere from a few bucks to $30.
Exactly.
And that isn't sustainable for regular retail traffic at a time where we don't have transit. I want the nicest choo-choos you can chew. Before some advocate jumps down my throat, I'm sitting in a studio with like 4 or 5 paintings, and we're the only media outlet in Metro Detroit that has a model streetcar sitting in the studio.
Right.
I'm on your team, but I also want these places to succeed. I am sick of a rotating cast of empty storefronts in many corners. I would like to see even more storefronts. You got to deal with the situation you have now. Mm-hmm. The situation you have now is we need a large garage, preferably with residential up top, preferably with some retail on the ground floor.
Right.
Dedicated to retail shopping in downtown Detroit. And it's subsidized in some way, bonded, whatever. You did all this fancy stuff for the stadiums. You can do something for us, mm-hmm. where it's $5 or $3 or whatever if you shop, because you have to bring those people down. Otherwise, nothing financially works. I know that there are so many hot takes online of this or that. And I've talked to so many business owners. I've been covering it. I've done pieces for public television. The problem is there's no foot traffic. The problem is there isn't enough money circulating around. Let's get to the point where we have the other problems. And if we can encourage shopping and encourage those jobs, encourage retail jobs, all that stuff, I think it would be better for everything overall, because then people have a clear idea of what they're going into. Because we are in a regional competition, and downtown Detroit isn't even in the conversation.
Right.
When you can just, even though it's annoying, and even though Royal Oak parking, not great.
Do not get me started on Royal
It's
Oak
terrible,
parking.
right? It's a terrible situation. But the worst you're going to be in for is a $20 ticket.
Yeah.
Whereas in Detroit, it could be double, triple, and unpredictable. And you need predictability for people to come through. My nuanced take that people are going to hate me for. Thoughts?
I think you're right. We need the other problem though, and I think this is a very well-known comment. People don't like garages because they want to be able to keep their eyes directly on where their car is and where the store is. But because we're downtown, you can't do that, right? You're not going to be able to pull up on Woodward and go into the Apple store. You're going to have to park and you're going to have to walk in.
Well, that's living in a big city.
Exactly.
And there has to be some compromises at some point.
Exactly. So I think that would be a good compromise. I do think that there used to be validation in the CompuWare building before it was Quicken.
I also thought about this when we threw our event earlier this year that happened to be on a game night, and we had probably half the attendance we could have, with people messaging me, I came down, but there's nowhere for me to park.
Yeah.
Because of the game night. So if we're talking specifically about there, we need destination and we need a real parking solution. And I know that's going to be politically unpopular because those parking lot owners have a lot of political sway.
Yes.
Way more. You think you have it bad in the suburbs.
Yeah.
It's not even close to what it's like here.
Yeah. I agree. I would love to see at least some of those parking lots turn into a garage or an actual building.
We've got the room.
We have the room. And I think it's also one of those things where it's like, okay, I would rather one of those empty parking lots
or two or three,
whatever. I mean, have an actual building built on them opposed to having a building torn down to have another building put up. I would like to see some more attractions. There was another store that I didn't mention, Jer, and I know it's a long shot. And I don't have girls, but I have nieces. And I think an American Girl store.
I'm unfamiliar.
It's a whole experience, Jer. You can have tea with your American Girl dolls. Now, there is one in New York City. There is one in Chicago. They're very rare to get one, but we would really be there.
Do you know what I think is absurd?
What?
That there isn't a Little Caesars flagship merch store. Why can't I go around and get my own pizza? Like, not that people love Little Caesars. There should, these big brands that are in Detroit should have something that's like, it just blows my mind that you can't get your own Little Caesars guy.
Right.
Or even Hot and Ready. You outside the ballpark, you can't.
Cannot get a Hot and Ready downtown. You can't. You're right.
That's absurd. There should be the coolest, most amazing Hot and Ready window experience downtown. And I know it sounds silly, but that's the brand that the nation knows us for. One thing I would like to see is the Navy Pier style attractions along the riverfront as part of the Rents and Redevelopment Plan.
Give me a giant Ferris wheel.
If you get a giant Ferris wheel, I want a doubly giant slide as Belle Isle with giant bumps on it that will literally shoot your butt all the way to Belle Isle. Who needs a ferry to Belle Isle? No, we need a ferry to Belle Isle.
We do need a
ferry
to
Belle
Isle.
You could have a 10-story slide that shot you in the air like a flying squirrel over to the island.
That's absurd.
But we should have a ferry to Belle Isle. That'd be a lot safer.
It would be. But yeah, I think a Navy Pier experience. I don't know. I know people are saying an aquarium, but I also feel like we have an aquarium, even though it's not a big, huge shed like aquarium.
It's a shame that downtown Detroit and Belle Isle aren't connected because the rest of the region doesn't understand how awesome Belle Isle can be because it's tucked away over there.
Yeah.
What about a food truck park?
I mean,
like by the Ferris wheel where it's corralled, and I think about downtown LA, San Francisco, where there's a section for that.
I mean, they kind of do that in the summertime in Cadillac Square. So,
but for lunch, they don't do it for other times.
They don't do it for other times. So I think, that could work. I think there needs to be, and I do think that the Downtown Detroit Authority does do a good job of like programming and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the Downtown Detroit Partnership does a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So but what else could we put down there?
This is where the listeners come in, Cheyenne. I want to hear your big, hairy, audacious goals for downtown. Whether you live downtown, Obviously, you need more amenities, grocery store, city Target, absolutely. But beyond that, what would be the next thing? You know, I heard available is the old hot taco spot.
Yes.
I want to hear what you would actually go to, especially if you're in the city, and then also if you're outside of the city.
What would make you come down?
What's worth a 20-minute, 30-minute, 40-minute drive for you to come down? I want to hear about it. dailydetroit@gmail.com. 313-789-3211 is the voicemail. With that, I'm J.R. Stays.
And I'm Cheyenne Serini.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our members on Patreon, patreon.com/dailydetroit. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around town.